What could you do to protect your pets if you're sick or injured? My product, Save My Pet ID tag, helps you ensure that your beloved pets are safe and well cared for, even when life isn't what you expect.
So having that love for the pet is great. But if you want to be successful, you better know how to do some of the business things. That is why you're in for a treat today, Pet Pals, because on our show today, I believe is one of the sharpest minds in the pet business industry. She has helped major companies and startups and solo entrepreneurs. And guess what? She digs pets too. She is here today to unleash some savvy tips and insights and how you could be successful in the pet world. So at this time, join me in giving pause and applause to my good friend, Erin Fenstermaker. Welcome, welcome, Erin.
Hi, Arden. Thank you for having me.
Erin has a business. Gosh, it's pretty easy to decode the name of your business. What is it called?
Well, I work with two businesses, actually. One is EF Consulting, which is my consulting side of the business. But then I also work with a company called Bird's Eye Advisory Group for the other part of my business.
Well, you got to explain that. Go with EF first and then go to the birds.
Well, the EF part, when I first got into the pet industry, I was doing consulting with pet businesses. And so I did that with 100% of my time. And I worked with businesses of all sizes, helping them with their financials, business strategy, marketing, really a lot of different aspects. Because a lot of people will start a business and they might be good at 3 or 4 things, but find that they're not so good at some other things. And I was a partner that liked to come in and try to fill the void in the areas that they needed some expertise. But then I also have partnered as of about 7 or 8 years ago. I started working with a very good friend of mine named Carol Frank, who is the founder of Bird's Eye Advisory Group, because she thought that I would be good at helping her sell pet companies because of the background that I had. And so fortunately, she was right, and we teamed up to do that. And so I had kind of 2 lives of how I spend my time, but both in areas that I really enjoy.
Well, I think it's important too when people want to get into switching industries. I spent 20 years in the newspaper and publishing field before I entered the pet industry. What were you doing prior to you getting involved in the pet industry?
It's a great question. I was working in technology. I was doing sales and account management for a technology company. And honestly, I wasn't that excited about it. I was pretty good at it, but it just didn't really get me that excited. And
You didn't wake up every Monday morning going, party on.
I can't honestly say that. But I also, one of the things, while I knew I wasn't exactly sure what I really wanted to do career-wise, I was very adamant that having more education in general was going to help me regardless of what path that I chose. So I was working in technology and I decided to get my MBA on a part-time basis while I was working full-time. And that really kind of catapulted me into feeling like I had a little bit more of a broader skill set to do almost anything. And so I eventually decided the career path I was following wasn't exactly what I wanted to do.
Well, we also need you to shout out where you got your degrees from because it's pretty prestigious school.
Well, thank you. I went to Southern Methodist University here in Dallas, Texas. I went there for my undergraduate degrees in Spanish and sociology. And then I went back almost a decade later to get my master's in business.
And what were you doing when you weren't in a classroom making a splash?
Well, the first time around, the other interesting part about my background that really has translated, honestly, into my business career is I was an athlete growing up. I was a gymnast and then I was a diver in high school and in college. And I was on a Division I top 10 swimming and diving team at SMU. And that, frankly, was one of the best areas where I really learned a lot about focus, setting goals, working hard at something every single day and starting to see progress. I mean, it really created the work ethic that I have today.
And let's just see, let's have young Erin on the diving board. And you do have to live in the me now. You have to live in that present moment in a competition. And what was your favorite dive that you knew you could do?
It's funny. I'm not necessarily sure I had one particular dive, but I knew that I was good at a lot of the basic dives. There's the basic dives and then the spinning and twisting dives. I was long and lean and skinny, and so I was pretty good at going in the water without making a splash. But I wasn't as athletic and as some of the people on my team. I mean, we had an Olympian that ended up going to the 1992 Olympics on my team, and so we had some
Nice.
amazing athletes. And so I realized maybe I don't have as much talent as everyone else on the team, but what I can control is how hard I work and my focus and dedication. And that's really what I had to hold on to, because I wasn't going to go to the Olympics, but that didn't mean that I couldn't contribute and be an important part of the team. And I also attribute that experience to literally was interacting with people that were able to go to the Olympics and knew them just like I would know any friend out there. And it really made me very conscious that everybody, regardless of their talents and how mega talented somebody might be or not, we're all the same. We put our pants on the same way. We have the same concerns going through life. And that also has really been helpful, because I don't care if somebody's the CEO of a company or the janitor of a company. You know, they both deserve equal treatment and are worth getting to know.
I love this because you are still honing some of the skills you've had as a collegiate Division I diver to this day. So lesson number one is sometimes tap into your development, right? And don't forget who you used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, today it's interesting. I haven't been a diver for 30 years. And at the same time, the lessons that I have learned from those years are still present in my day. I'm very disciplined. I'm very methodical about going after the things that I want to do. And those were lessons that I learned because of sport. And they translate perfectly to business as well. So
I want to give a little bit of your history in the pet world. And I think it's kind of neat. You really, one of your points, I think, is the need to always continue educating yourself. And there are degrees out there and there's certificates. So what was one of the first certificates you got training-wise?
Well, actually, let me back up and let me tell you how I got into the pet industry, or decided to get into the pet industry. Back in 2004, when I was working for the technology company, I decided that this really wasn't where I wanted to be in the long term, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. And so I decided to take a sabbatical, and I quit my job and I traveled around the world for 6 months.
Wow.
And during that time, I picked the places that I went to based on, in many cases, what animals that they had that I wanted to see. And so I worked on a wild animal refuge. I saw animals all over Africa, also in South America. And I realized, you know what? It's really interesting. This common thread is these animals that I'm very passionate about getting to meet. And so when I finished that round the world trip, I thought it was pretty obvious that I should probably look for a career in the animal field, in pet somehow. And so I returned to Dallas after those 6 months, and I contacted the only person that I knew at the time that was in the pet industry, who was my dear friend, Carol Frank. And at the time, she owned a pet business that manufactured products for the bird and parrot segment.
Okay.
And so I talked to her and said, hey, I've just come back from 6 months around the world. Do you need any help? And fortunate for me, she decided to hire me. And while I was doing that, I also decided that I wanted to learn more. Going back to your earlier question, I wanted to learn more about the pet world. And so I decided that I wanted to get my dog training certification, because I thought learning more about behavior was going to help me no matter what I ended up choosing to do. So I ended up joining the Animal Behavior College online program to become a certified dog trainer. And that was just one of the first things that I did, because I was like, I'm not exactly sure. I don't think I want to be a dog trainer, but I want this knowledge. I want this expertise. And I want to be able to talk to people about behavior and have a good foundation. And so that's kind of how I started. in the pet world. Fortunate to have a friend that helped me, but also I decided to get some education on the side.
So a couple lessons are popping out here. So it's good to network, and it's good to put your paw in the water and try to get a skill. You love dogs, but you wanted to do more than just love dogs. You wanted to understand dogs and be able to train dogs.
And the other thing that was interesting when I was getting my MBA back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had starting a business class, and we had to work in a small group and write a business plan to start a business that you would potentially do after you graduated from college or from grad school. And the one that I chose was to do opening a dog daycare and pet sitting company. And so I did a semester-long project of doing a business plan of opening such a company within the Dallas area. And for better or worse, one of the things that I learned through doing that project was that if I really wanted to interact with animals, but after doing the business plan, I realized if I was going to work in a service-based industry like a dog daycare and pet sitting business, that I was going to be interacting with people a heck of a lot more than I was going to be interacting with animals.
We're going to continue with Erin talking about her path to being very successful in the pet industry and hoping to help you as well. But we got to take a quick break, y'all. You know what the deal is. You got to sit, stay. We'll be right back.
Hey, have you heard? Four-Legged Life has a new digital newsletter. Here, let me show you how you get yourself subscribed. So you just type in Four-Legged Life, and that'll take you to the website. There we go. And this magic thing just appears, and you type in your email address. I'll use, let's see, how about coolestdogever@gmail.com. That's me. And then you just click on this thing here. There you go. It's the new digital newsletter from Four-Legged Life. Get subscribed today.
Welcome back to Arden Moore's Four-Legged Life Show. I'm your host, Arden Moore. On our show today is one of the top business minds in the pet industry. She is Erin Fenstermaker of EF Consulting and another company, Bird's Eye
Advisory Group. She does a lot in a day. She helps small individual entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs. She helps with big businesses. And the whole focus of the segment is some tips that she's been sharing to all of us on how, if you want to make that leap into the pet industry, multi-billion-dollar pet industry. So we talked about her diving and her education. And I want to ask you, how do you deal with failure? Erin, how does failure turn into a good lesson that makes you a better person in the world of business and pets? Well, it reminds me of the saying that Michael Jordan has, you miss every shot you don't take. And a lot of people are frozen with the fear of failure. And to me, failure is just part of life. And so I can also say, having been in sports where perfection is the goal, I also am realistic enough to know that just doesn't exist. Perfection doesn't exist. And so we're all human beings and we're going to make mistakes. And usually on a consultative capacity, I'm trying to help my clients minimize the mistakes that they make in business. But I also recognize that sometimes them making the mistake is the best lesson. And so obviously, I don't necessarily want them all to make mistakes and experience negative consequences, but at the same time, that may be the best way for them to learn. So it's an interesting path to be on, but I also think it goes back to you have to be willing to put out there what you want. And
so the other aspect I want is there's different ways to be successful in the pet industry. There are people that have podcasts. There are people that teach courses. There are people that are trainers, but there are brick and mortar and there are people that run businesses online. I know one of your specialties is risk management. For us, just briefly, what does that mean?
Well, so it's funny. Risk management is essentially looking at a business and looking at the areas that they have the most risk in. And it can be almost anything. So let me give you a couple of examples. One example might be where the owner is the center of the entire company and they don't cross-train enough of their employees. So if something happens to that business owner, the business may come crashing down because they're overly reliant on the owner.
Good point.
One area of risk. Another area of risk might be, let's say you were working a dog walking or pet sitting business and you don't have clear policies and procedures and an employee handbook and things like that. So potentially, if there is a disagreement or a dispute with an employee, you may be open to liability because of the lack of clear rules that you have implemented and trained your staff. So what I have done is I essentially specialize in looking at a business and trying to find the areas that they might have some risk.
So you look for landmines to avoid.
I do think like the skeletons in the closet, but it's also a lot of times it might be inadvertent things that, that business owners may never have really even looked at, or that they may have a higher risk tolerance. Every owner is different. And so some might be more risk averse than others. And so that's actually something that you need to really own and kind of gauge with whoever that you work with. But at the same time, the other reason that it's important to look at overall risk in a business is because most of the people I work with eventually want to sell their business.
Okay.
So if they mitigate the areas of risk, the value of their business goes up. And so most people, when they sell their business, would like a higher valuation versus a lower valuation. So that's usually the driver for, one, identifying the areas of risk and then addressing ways that you can mitigate those so that when you do sell one day, you're much likelier to find a buyer and hopefully get a higher value out of, from your business.
Another area that I know I've seen your face at, and that is one of the large trade shows like Global Pet Expo and Super Zoo and places like that. You can get swallowed up in those places. Global Pet Expo is about 7 football fields big, so get your walking shoes on. You can really get drowned in everything that's everything. So what are a couple quick tips you can offer on how to smartly network, including at major events like Global?
That's a great question. So I can tell you what I end up doing, which is before I even show up at the conference, I make a list of things that I want to accomplish. So in that case, for me, it's typically people that I want to meet, people I want to learn a little bit more about their business. Obviously, I might set up appointments with certain people, but I'm very methodical and thinking through, I have a limited amount of time. What do I want to accomplish? And I have a list. So when I show up and the doors open, I know exactly what I'm about to go do. To me, it's like showing up to life without a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're much more likely to meander around and you may stumble across something interesting. But those people that are really looking for whatever, I might be looking to learn about a particular product or a business, or I want to meet a founder for whatever reason. Having a plan is what makes my time more successful once I get there. And so I wouldn't navigate any of these shows without a clear plan. And so I usually ask people that are going to go to these shows, what do you want to get out of it?
Yeah.
If you don't have a good goal to why you want to show up, then don't spend the money to go, because you're not going to be maximizing your time there.
I like that. And serendipity sometimes is my friend, but strategy should always be next to me, right?
Absolutely. I have been very fortunate, even in my career, where I meandered at times, and just coincidentally, some of that meandering, I ended up stumbling across some great opportunities, but not everything in life is like that. And so in the areas where I can plan ahead and go, I want to go here. Why do I want to go there? What do I want to accomplish? Who do I want to meet? Who do I want to talk to? And I make sure and I set those goals and those to-dos so that I'm more likely to accomplish most of them. And that's when I look back at events and go, wow, that was a great event that I went to. Well, but it's because of the prep work that I did before I got there.
Another area I want to ask you is giving back. And it doesn't mean just giving back in terms of donations or time. One of the things that I found about you is that you foster older dogs, and now you have one that is your dog. But can you talk about how is it good to also do something to give back?
Well, I consider volunteering as to be part of my education, because I'm volunteering in the pet world, which is an area I'm completely enamored with and passionate about. But because I have tried to educate myself as much as I can about pets, I've searched out opportunities where, as an example, I used to be on the board of directors for the Humane Society of Dallas County here. That was a volunteer position, but I got an incredible amount of knowledge that I gained from having that experience.
Okay.
In addition to choosing to volunteer and foster. And I personally have gravitated towards older animals because I like to maintain a fairly calm household. And so
You don't want puppies running around?
no, I prefer the more laid back ones that like to nap a lot. Those have really touched my heart. They fit the environment I want to live in. And so it's like, why wouldn't I want to do something good for the world and good for an animal by just opening up my home to them?
And quickly, your baby is named Snowball. Mm-hmm. And at what age did Snowball come to your home? And at what age did Snowball start learning agility?
Well, so I fostered Snowball for the first time when she was 9. Her owner had passed away. And I quickly learned that she was a very special dog and a very intelligent dog. And I love that because I know that smart dogs are very easy to train. And so I chose to adopt her at age 9. And it had always been my dream to participate in dog agility. And so I decided that even though Snowball was a senior, I know she was smart enough to be able to do agility. So we joined an agility class at her age 10 for her. And she's now 12. And so we've been doing it for a little over 2 years. And it brings so much joy to me getting to do that with her. But also, I learn things. I learn things from other people, how they are with their dogs. I learn from my own dog. I learn about great products and services because the people I'm with, it fills a lot of buckets for me.
Okay, time goes by quick. We got a minute left. And I think you can't be all work, Erin, and no play. Tell us 2 things that you are passionate about.
Well, I have many, but I would say the biggest are probably travel. I love seeing the world, so I try to do that regularly, and I still continue to travel and see animals at every opportunity that I have. But then my other big passion is following the professional tennis tours. So I'm a huge Serena Williams, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer fan, and now Carlos Alcaraz and other great players. And that's another way that I continue to participate in athletics and also, to me, it brings me a lot of peace just watching the competition. I just get a lot out of it.
So the bottom line is you can't be all work. You got to have a little play. But I think you made the right choice getting into the pet field.
Oh, I absolutely did. I mean, the pet industry is the absolute best. I've never once looked back since I have gotten my feet wet in it.
All right. Can't believe the time goes by quickly, pet pals. That's it for our show today.
Thanks so much for making our tails wag by watching this guest interview from Arden Moore's Four-Legged Life. Four-Legged Life. Make sure to subscribe so you're up to date with all of our Four-Legged Life content.